It's Thursday, May 15th, 2025. Welcome to Make It Make Sense. I'm Granthermes. Today on the show, don't believe your lying eyes. Donald Trump makes his first state visit abroad, and just like his first term, it's to the Middle East. Now, according to Trump, this trip is all about deal-making, which is kind of a weird thing on its face for presidents to do. We'll talk a little bit about that today, but it's also for American companies and his own personal businesses, which we'll also talk about. But the real thing I want to get into today in this episode is the White House's pattern of inflating just how big these deals really are. But before we get started, make sure that you are subscribed or following the podcast, whatever app you listen to it on. Leave a review if you like what you hear here in this episode. It really helps boost the show on those platforms. Make sure you're subscribed and you like and hit the bell for notifications on YouTube. It also boosts it there. And sign up for the Make It Make Sense Substack. It's just $5 a month. You'll get access to all sorts of great new articles I'm dropping all the time, including one just yesterday about the white supremacist lie that's upholding the Trump administration's brand new refugee policy for white South Africans. If you don't want to do that, no sweat, but please share the show on social media. It's Mims News Pod, MIMS News Pod, on every platform. And one more thing, I know that this is in your feeds on Friday morning and not Thursday afternoon. There were some major tech difficulties with yesterday's episode, so it just didn't get out on time. Those things don't happen often, but when they do, I almost nearly burn the house down. So, it just took an extra 12 hours to get this episode out, and I'm sorry about that you'll have a double up in the feed today. But anyway, let's get on with the show. So this week, President Trump embarked on his first major visit to a foreign country. Yes, he did go to the Vatican for the funeral of Pope Francis, but that wasn't a fully orchestrated state visit like this is. And normally, when presidents go on their very first state visit, it's to a close ally like Canada or Mexico or the UK, partly because they're physically close like Canada or Mexico, or that we traditionally have a long history with them like the UK, and also partly because these state dinners and these state visits are logistical nightmares for any administration, even on their second go-around. The people are different, things are still complicated, probably more complicated than they were last time, or the complications are different, and you want to have someone who's maybe a little friendlier and maybe a little bit closer to home in case things go wrong. But that's not what Trump did here. Instead, just like his first term, his first state visit is to Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, these are three Middle Eastern countries that are ruled by super wealthy, oil baron royal families who are known for brutal murders of journalists, aiding the 9/11 hijackers, funneling money to Hamas, undercutting American energy companies, and bribing foreign leaders. These state visits are also about sending a message to the rest of the world about continuity and security with close allies, and that is certainly not the message that Trump is sending here to the rest of the world by visiting these three countries first. Now, there has been a lot of writing about the bribery part of this trip, namely Trump getting a $400 million jet from the Qatari government that he says he'll use as an Air Force One, and then it'll go into his presidential library afterwards. He says he won't be using it to fly around in. And to be very clear, no one believes that. This plane is much nicer than his current jet, which is a Boeing 747. He calls it Trump Force One. It's nicer than Air Force One. Air Force One is a little old now. It's a little dated. And this Qatari plane is said to be a palace in the sky. I mean, it is really nice on the inside. But the thing is, per the Constitution, it's illegal for Trump to accept this gift. I mean, it's illegal for him to accept any gift without congressional approval. It's something called the Emoluments Clause. You might remember it from his first term being talked about a lot. This is how it reads in the Constitution. No person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept of any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. So this plane would definitely fall under that. Now, Congress does allow presidents to accept and keep gifts worth less than $480, which obviously this plane is not that. And in the past, when presidents have received large gifts, they've immediately turned them over to the National Archives so that they are property of the United States, not just a single person. The largest gift received by any recent president or any modern president was a $500,000 statue of two Arabian horses that was given to Obama that he turned over to the National Archives right away. But that's not what Trump is doing here. And to put into context how wild this gift is, since 2000, gifts to presidents have totaled $3.8 million. This plane is worth, according to the White House and Trump himself, about $400 million, which is more than 105 times more valuable than all of the gifts given to presidents in the last quarter century. Now, the White House says the plane isn't even a gift to Trump himself, but a gift to the Defense Department, which would operate the plane. Now, the White House says this plane isn't a gift to Trump, the man, but to his Department of Defense, because the DoD would essentially operate the plane. And then, like I said, it would go into his private presidential library, although, again, nobody believes that he isn't going to be flying at least home on this thing after he leaves office in 2028. But regardless of those things, it is still just a plane, albeit a super luxury one. It's still just a plane. And Air Force One has to be a flying Oval Office, briefing room, and situation room that can withstand a nuclear blast and evade heat-seeking missiles. I mean, think about the last time you were on an airliner. Do you think that thing could outrun a missile? Absolutely not. And this thing is bigger than that. So this plane needs upgrades. And on top of that, there are security concerns. So the plane could be bugged or tampered with somehow, which means it will need to be likely taken apart practically bolt by bolt and piece by piece to make sure that when the president boards his new gifted Air Force One, that he and our national secrets will be safe on this plane. In all, because it needs these upgrades, aviation experts say it'll cost the U.S. about $1 billion to do those upgrades for just a single plane that will, if Trump is lucky, be in the air for 3 years. Because Trump wants this done by next year, although aviation experts just don't think it can happen that fast, so he likely won't even be flying on it until maybe 2026. And then it also turns out the White House might have lied about how much this plane is worth. Several sources who spoke to CNN said it was only worth about $250 million, not the $400 million that the White House said. And even at $250 million, it's still 66 times more valuable than every gift given to a president in the last 25 years. But that aside, it brings me to the thing that I really want to talk about. Yes, there's going to be a lot said and written about the personal family deals Trump is setting himself and his kids up for with this Middle East trip. A new Trump Tower in Syria in exchange for lifting sanctions there. A new multi-billion-dollar investment from Saudi Arabia for Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. A multi-million-dollar Trump resort in the UAE and another Trump Tower in Saudi Arabia. But what's not being talked about as much, while those things are important, is the fact that these deals that Trump is supposed to be making, quote-unquote, on behalf of us with these countries are much, much smaller than they're saying, despite the White House official documents calling Trump the deal maker in chief. Now, before I go into the numbers, it's worth pointing out that it's pretty weird for a president to claim to be negotiating on behalf of American companies. It's just not how presidents operate, partly because they can't actually control companies. Sure, they could put a lot of pressure on a company here or there, but they can't control them. They don't run them. And presidents aren't allowed to control commerce. That's Congress's job. So a lot of what Trump is doing here is at best for show, and at worst, it's him opening up himself, the office of the presidency, and the U.S. to be on the wrong end of a quid pro quo with these countries. But moving on, the White House announced that the deals with Saudi Arabia amount to $600 billion in investments to the U.S. But when you look at the total amount the White House released, it only comes out to about $283 billion. And when the New York Times talked to organizers of this event, they said it was about $300 billion. So a far cry from what we're hearing from our own White House. And on top of that, most of the deals that they laid out were already in the works before Trump. Several engineering firms that the White House says are part of his overall deal, like AECOM, Parsons, and Jacobs, they all had ongoing projects in Saudi Arabia going back, in some cases, to Trump's first term, and many that didn't have anything to do with him in the first place. And then there were other deals, quote unquote, that really were just commitments for plans of future investments. And yes, that is how a lot of business deals look on paper, but there is a point in which things actually have to get done. Case in point, Google, Uber, and Salesforce are all part of a group of tech companies that are planning to spend $80 billion in, quote, cutting-edge transformative technologies in both countries, whatever that means. The Saudi Arabian AI company Datavolt says it's, quote, moving forward with plans to invest $20 billion in AI data centers around the U.S., which obviously come with their own national security concerns that could block those deals. But it's sort of like the thing Trump said in the debate, that he has concepts of plans. That's what we're looking at here. Even the defense deal that was made, which the White House is saying is the largest in U.S. history with Saudi Arabia at $142 billion, they don't give any details about what that money is for, if it's new investment or if Trump is taking credit for things that were already happening. In Qatar, the White House took credit for a major deal between Boeing and the Qatari national airway Qatar Air. Except Boeing and Qatar have a 20-year relationship, and this deal was likely going to get done no matter who was in office. The White House also is taking credit for defense and engineering contracts and projects that, just like in Saudi Arabia, predated Trump's presidency this time around and this current visit. In all, the administration says the deal is a staggering $1.2 trillion deal, but even in the headline on the White House's own page, it admits the deals are only about $243 billion, which is a long way off from $1.2 trillion. Like, they're missing $1 trillion. But they have the potential to generate $1.2 trillion. And then today, Trump said the entire Persian Gulf trip could be worth 4 times that amount.
I just want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the media. The media, I have to say, has been very fair. They've been very fair. They've been terrific, actually. I was watching some of our, normally they would not say good things, but they're having a hard time saying bad because this is a record tour. There's never been a tour that will raise, it could be a total of $3.5–4 trillion. This, just in this 4 or 5 days.
And you can hear it in his voice there. There is no evidence to back up what he's saying. There aren't numbers to back up what he's saying. Those investment projections are just optimistic lies. And it brings to mind, for me, this entire trip, the expression, when people tell you who they are, believe them. And Trump has been telling us who he is for a long time. He has spent his life making up numbers. When he was in real estate in New York, the New York Times did a massive expose during his first term that looked at his tax records and found fraud all over the place, including a big thing where his father would inflate the cost of repairs that needed to be made on Trump-owned buildings and then get a company that his kids owned to do those repairs, essentially allowing him to funnel money to his children by committing fraud. And I need to say here that Trump's lawyers in that piece said that there is no fraud in the family's history. Now, Trump himself was found to have inflated his own net worth by $2.2 billion by a judge in 2023, most of that by lying about the size and value of his New York properties, which eventually led to his 34 convictions last summer. He also lied about a lot of things during his first term. The Washington Post added up all of his false statements during his first term, and it totaled more than 30,000 lies in 4 years. He even inflated numbers in his last first state visit to Saudi Arabia, where he said that the jobs that were supposed to be created from that visit were 450,000, and then it was 500,000, and then it was more than 1 million. And then already in this term, like a week ago, the White House said that Trump had secured $9 trillion in investment for the U.S. Most of that turned out to be just promises of investment, mostly from foreign countries to curry favor with Trump, not even investment itself, and several $100 billion of the investment that was there from American companies came from before Trump took office and would have happened whether he was in office or not. And even if you took the entire $9 trillion number on its face, what the White House released only added up to $7 trillion. And so far, the administration has refused to say why the number they claimed and the number they've released are so drastically different. Because let's be clear here, $2 trillion is not a rounding error. And that's sort of the point of everything I'm talking about. If we have inflated numbers coming from almost every corner of this administration, it makes it incredibly hard to trust what they're doing and whether or not it's good. And it seems to be that the White House, the administration, and its officials don't have any remorse for any of that, whether they're at best just hiding numbers for reasons we don't know, or at worst, they're outright lying to us about them and telling us that we shouldn't believe the things that we're seeing. Okay, that is it for today's episode. Please rate and review the show on whatever podcast app you listen to this on. Like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube so you don't miss out on any new video episodes. Also, subscribe to the Make It Make Sense Substack. It's just $5 a month. And if you don't want to do that, please share the show on social media. It's Mims News Pod. That's MIMS News Pod, all one word on every platform. I am at Granthermes on X and Bluesky, and at Granthermes TV on everything else. Thank you so much for listening today. I'm Granthermes, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.